Welcome, StarCraft community, to Discussions with Deadzerg, and today we're going to be talking about the keyboard. So the keyboard is a lot less complicated than the mouse. There's a lot less settings to deal with, but it can also be just as complicated if we're delving into the hotkey aspect of the keyboard. But today we're just going to be talking about the piece of hardware and Windows settings, those kind of things, to make the keyboard function how you want it to function in-game. So I actually accidentally deleted my notes somehow off my Google Drive, which is kind of crazy. And so I just wrote out my notes quickly, so hopefully I don't miss anything, but I doubt I will. So first thing I want to talk about is the keyboard type. So I'm using Razer Black Widow. It actually has a numpad, which is going to be something I'll quickly mention. So the biggest thing with a keyboard is the size of the keyboard when you're trying to find one that will fit your style of playing in StarCraft. If you're a user who likes to have high sensitivity on the mouse and say plays at the edge of the desk so you're not moving your hand around a lot when you're playing, any size of keyboard is probably going to work because you're most likely rarely encountering the situation where you're actually bumping in to the keyboard with the mouse. If you have very low sensitivity, I would highly recommend a keyboard without the numpad, just because that gives you a little bit extra space to have the mouse closer into the keyboard or the keyboard closer into the mouse. You don't want to be playing with your arms spread out wide like this. Like, this is not a very ergonomical position. Like, our bodies aren't meant to be like this. Our bodies are kind of meant to have our arms just hanging naturally at the side and extending forward like this, not like this either. So the hands sort of go out and are in this position as if they're about to pick something up. So that's the biggest thing, is that you want to have a keyboard that complements the style of mouse that you have. I would also suggest buying a keyboard from the same manufacturer as your mouse. Maybe I'm only speaking in the situation, in the case of a user who has Razer, but it's really nice to have all of your peripherals in the same driver if possible. So if you can have all your mouse settings in the same place and all your keyboard settings in the same place, that's pretty nice. It makes it less of a headache to figure out, like, oh, I need to change this thing with my keyboard and this thing. If you go to a tournament, you might have to install additional drivers on their computer. They might not be happy about that. So if they're all in one sort of like gaming driver, it's just going to be like, yeah, I need Razer Synapse. Like, are you kidding me? Like, every tournament is going to let you have Razer Synapse on the computer. So that would be my main suggestion, is same brand of a peripheral for both mouse and keyboard. So then the other thing to talk about with keyboards is switches. So you can either have like the like sort of like plastic membrane style keyboard, which are the cheaper style keyboards, or you can have a mechanical keyboard. I would highly suggest a mechanical keyboard. They are marketed towards gamers just because they're high quality keyboards. You can tell when each key has been actuated, so when it's actually been used. It overall makes playing feel more pleasurable, at least in my experience. So I would recommend a mechanical keyboard. The only downside really is the cost and the noise. So they are more noisy than another keyboard. But I personally think that the feel that they give you is something that allows you to play longer. It's sort of more pleasurable. It's kind of weird, but that's been my experience with them. I actually played my very first tournament. I was a diamond player. I went in, I actually beat a masters player, felt really good about myself. And then he came over and he saw my keyboard and he's like, dude, you really need to buy a new keyboard. And at that point I didn't realize, and then I bought a new keyboard and I was like, oh my god, mechanical keyboards are way better. So what kind of switch do you want? There's a whole bunch of different kinds. Black switches, clear switches, brown switches, red switches, green switches, orange switches. It's crazy. So the green and the orange are specifically from Razer. Green is like a blue switch. Sorry, I didn't mention blue either. Green is like blue. Orange is like red. And so each switch has its sort of own characteristic. Blue, there's a very clear point at which the key goes and it clicks. It audibly clicks so you can hear it, but it also has a feeling like it clicks down. Brown, it has the same kind of click. It's a little bit less pronounced, but it doesn't make this clicking sound. It just goes down instead of like that really annoying clicking sound that you'll hear when you're watching streams or something. Most likely a blue keyboard. Brown keyboards, less sound, same kind of actuation bump. It's like you push down and then at some point there's way more resistance, and then you push past that and it sort of clicks down. Then you feel, oh, I've actually pressed the key and it's done something in the game. Then there's red, where it's smooth. So from when you start to when you bottom out the key, it feels exactly the same. It's just like a smooth descent down. Personally, it's my favorite. Black is the same kind of clicking sound, where when you push it down, it clicks and it has a bump, but it takes way more force to actually push the key down. So I would personally recommend for StarCraft either brown or blue or red. I would stay away from black because it's going to be very tiring on your hand to have to push very hard on each key to make it do something. I initially had a black keyboard when I didn't know what switches were, and I hated it. I played like 2 days and my hand was just so tired, and was like, I'm going to get like wrist injuries from playing on this keyboard just because of how StarCraft works. If you're playing like an FPS or something, maybe it's useful. But for StarCraft, I don't think it's useful. I personally prefer red or orange just because they have the lowest actuation force. So you have to push the key the least hard on those keyboards to actually make it actuate. It's a very small difference, very small. I don't actually remember what units it's measured in, but it's like you need like 45 units of force to push down a blue key or a brown key, and you need like 40 or 35 to press down like a red or an orange key. So it's a very small difference, but personally I notice it, and I really love that feeling of just having more ease in my play. It's also doesn't have the bump, and it doesn't have the sound. So it's quieter keyboard, which is nice if you're playing and people are trying to sleep around you. And it makes playing just a little bit smoother, a little bit easier. Personal preference, but I would definitely say go with a mechanical keyboard. Stay away from clear and black switches because they take more force to actuate. Stick to something like blue, red, or brown. And these keyboards, they retain value fairly well, so you might even look on Kijiji and buy a brown one, and then buy a red one and try them both out, and then at the end of the day just decide and then sell one of them. It's actually what I did. I bought I think I had 4 or 5 different keyboards all at once, and I was trying them all out actively at the same time as trying out a bunch of different mouses. And so that's how I came to my conclusions. I would buy them used and resell them if you feel like that's not the type of keyboard for you. But I wouldn't get in the mindset of just locking in and saying, that's the only keyboard for me. I need specifically a brown or something like that. Keep your mind open. Try a bunch of different things. All right. Now for the important part of the video. All of that is sort of personal preference. Here we go. So let's talk about some settings. Keyboard properties in Windows is actually kind of important. I think this gets overlooked, and I only found it like a few months ago. So I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but I experienced this when I played on my Mac laptop. I was playing StarCraft when I was on holidays. And I would press down the key for Zealot, and then wave my mouse, and it would take like 2 seconds before it started warping in. So I would just be sitting there, holding the key down, waving my mouse, and it's like, brrr, and then the Zealots warp in. Kind of weird. And I never knew why this happened. But this happens because of repeat delay and repeat rate. So when you watch pros play, I'm sure the warp prism changes position, is like boom, and then like 10 Zealots are just warping in. You're like, damn. When I played on my Mac as well, I would wave the mouse and it'd be like do 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 do, and I'd make Zealots like that fast instead of like brrr, and just make them all at once. So how do you change this? These are the settings which you change this. So repeat delay, you want it to be short. basically repeat delay is how long it's going to take the keyboard to start repeating. So watch here. See it pauses on the first letter and then it repeats. Now watch me make this long. I might have to click apply. Let's do that. You see how long that took? And I'm holding the key down that entire time. So what you want is you want the keyboard to register that the key is actually repeating as fast as possible. Because your goal as a StarCraft gamer is to just click the key if you want to click it and hold it down if you want like Zerglings or something like that. It's very inefficient to go like with the finger to create a bunch of units unless you want a very specific number. If you're just mass warping in Stalkers or Zerglings or something, hold the key down, and having a very fast repeat rate will help that, will facilitate the, say, rapid fire warp in or mass production of units from Zerg, those kind of things. This is probably less useful as a Terran player just because you're probably going to want to specifically add numbers of things in, but if you're really taxed or you're a scrub like me, you might want to just add Marines to everything really fast. In this case, repeat delay is going to help you. It also helps, you can use it to jump to different control groups by just holding the key down instead of double tapping. I still think double tapping is probably more efficient and a little bit faster, and it's more deliberate, but it is a possibility. Okay, repeat rate is basically how fast it repeats. So we saw before, you see that? It repeats very slowly instead of very quickly. This will cause you to warp in zealots like do, 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 even though you're holding the key down. So you want repeat rate very fast. Cursor blink rate doesn't really matter. So those are the two primary settings that have an impact on the game. Huge impact on Protoss players because it's gonna, like, if your repeat delay is low and your repeat rate is slow, it's going to take you a long time to warp in units if you're using rapid fire. If you're not using rapid fire, you should use rapid fire. I will find you if you're not using rapid fire, Artosis. I will find you. Because rapid fire is so easy, so fast, and it is the most efficient way, and it's kind of crazy not to use it. Like, there's no downside. There's no downside. So, okay, let's talk about drivers. So drivers over here, this is my keyboard driver. I personally really like Razer Synapse because Razer Synapse allows you to do a ton of things. So here you can see these green keys. I can't actually show them because my cursor disappears for you guys, but you see these green keys? They're not like the black keys. So what I've actually been able to do is remap what this key is. Like my Alt, this one here, is actually tilde. And this this key here, the like list key or whatever it's called, that one is shift. And shift up here, the shift, that's control. And control is alt. So I've switched around all my modifiers. So long story short, if you're playing on the left side of your keyboard, great. I play on the right side of my keyboard, but if you play on the left side of your keyboard, you can also do the same thing. So the idea is, there's this modifier here, Alt, that we hardly ever use in game for anything. But if you put Alt on, say, like the Windows key, what you can do then is actually press Alt-Shift at the same time, or Control-Shift at the same time, those two keys down, and so you get two more modifiers. So you can have 5 modifiers. So it allows you to do a lot more diverse things with your hotkey setup and bring a lot of actions that were really far away really close into your setup. So things that are on like F6 can instead be on F1 or on tilde or on tab or on Q or on W. You bring things in really close, and because you're doing that, you're avoiding a lot of the pitfalls of bad hotkey setups, which I am going to talk about in next week's episode. So those are the basic settings. There's also fun things in the driver applications here that you can disable keys and you can change the lighting of your keyboard and stuff like that. So that's cool. But I think the biggest thing for Razer Synapse that is a benefit is that what you can actually do is remap keys. So If there's a function that you want to duplicate somewhere else, you can. You can move a function, because StarCraft doesn't let you change what shift is. And what I mean by that is you can never say, like, shift clicking units out of a selection group. You can never give that function to a key that isn't shift on your keyboard. So I can never say, well, I want to actually press caps locks when I want to click units out of a control group. You can't. Unless you tell your keyboard that the key in caps lock's position is shift. And that's what this driver allows you to do, which I think is really powerful. And so it allows you to actually avoid making a lot of actions. So you can go from 200 actions a minute to 160 a minute and still accomplish all the same things by combining functions and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about that in hotkeys. I'm super passionate about hotkeys. And so next week I'm going to probably do like an hour-long video on hotkeys. I don't want to use it as a sort of political statement for myself. It's not about what hotkeys I use. I'm not going to say you should use those hotkeys, but I want to illustrate some universal concepts that will help you avoid injuries and have more ease while you're playing. So that's next week. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at Deadzerg SC2. I'm also at Deadzerg SC2 on Twitch. I stream here and there, probably 2 or 3 times a week. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you next time.